la ya ya la la ya da da ay 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 na na da ay 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 ya da da la la da 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 ay 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 yada da ay ay yada da dum bum bum ba da dum ay 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 ha la 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 da ay 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 yada dum. A good evening, a good moed. Welcome everybody on a Monday, learning during the intermediate days of Sukkot. Let's light up the darkness. That melody, by the way, was the Berdichever Nigun, made famous by the Berdichever Rebbe, Rabbi Levi Yitzhak of Berdichev. And tradition says that he, the Berdichever Rebbe, who was the greatest advocate for the Jewish people, just loved every Jew and sort of would ascend because he was such a righteous, elevated soul. And he would ascend up to the heavenly tribunal and confront the Satan and argue on our behalf before the heavenly tribunal. And you know, when we sing that melody, we invoke all the love of the Berdichever Rebbe. And some even say, you know, he fights for us up there. You know, so even as we contend with the dark forces and the difficulties which confront us in this world, the Rebbe advocates for us in the upper world. And that's the famous Berdichever Nigun. Who's in the house on a Monday? Yehuda in South Carolina, Paul in Chicago, Bill in Missouri, Ryan in Florida, Bella in Florida, Sandy in Michigan, Eric in Fort Myers, John in Maine, James in Indianapolis, Sharon is in the house, studying in the sukkah. I should do that. I meant to relocate the class to the sukkah. Maybe I'll try to do that tomorrow night. Guy in Ohio, Paul in the Great Northwest, David in Indiana, Shandora in the Bronx, Leona in Illinois, John in Surfside Beach, South Carolina, Belle in the Sukkah, Sharon. We should be singing one of the only Sukkot songs I know, V'samachta hagecha. Yeah, but I'm such a bad singer, and even worse than my ability to carry a tune is my ability to remember a melody, like at will, and summon up a melody. Some people are ingenious at that. I'm so bad at it. Randy says Modim L'Simcha from Florida. Alan in the house from Maryland. Marjorie says Shalom. Marie checking in from Freeport. Welcome everybody. Our daf is page page 49 here in Tractate Kiddushin, 20th volume of the Talmud. We're continuing our discussion of Mishnah number 3 here in chapter 2, and we'll get into Mishnah number 4. We're talking about the laws of betrothal, and specifically in this Mishnah number 3. So what if the guy says, be betrothed to me, not on the condition, right? Be betrothed to me with this item, right? You're going to use an item of value, so either use money itself or something that is worth money. So what if he said, okay, be betrothed to me with this cup of wine, and it turned out to be a cup of honey. Now, unclear whether wine or honey is more valuable, but at any rate, it's not what he said he was betrothing her with. And likewise, if he said, be betrothed to me on the condition that I am this or that I am that, and then what if he turned out to be something different? Now, obviously, if he says, be betrothed to me with this gold dinar, and then it turns out that the dinar he gave her was made out of silver, I mean, I think it's just common sense that he promised a gold dinar and delivered a silver dinar. And you know, there's not too many times or places in earthly history where silver is worth more than gold. So he promised gold, delivered silver. Makes sense that betrothal is no good. Betrothal was not created. But it also says in our Mishnah that if he said, be betrothed to me with this silver dinar, and it turned out to be gold, now you might think, well, okay, he over-delivered. He under-promised and over-delivered, so the betrothal should work. But the majority say no. If he said he was betrothing her with something specific, and then even if he gave more or something more valuable than that, betrothal is not created. One of the reasons is that, well, generally silver may be worth less than gold, but perhaps in this situation for that person, she wanted silver. She didn't want gold. And so he didn't deliver what he said he would, and even if it was worth more, they did not create betrothal. And Rabbi Shimon says, yeah, they did, but he is the minority opinion. Rabbi Shimon would say, look, if you over-delivered, it's only to her advantage, the betrothal should be created. But the majority say no. Okay. We pick this up at the very bottom of page 48b. Abaye said, with regard to Rabbi Shimon and Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel and Rabbi Elazar, they all hold that when one instructs an agent as in such a manner. So one of the ideas about our Mishnah and how we're to understand it is that, well, maybe it wasn't so much that he said to her, I'm going to betroth you with this silver dinar, and then he gave gold. But rather, he said to his agent, go and betroth that young lady with a silver dinar. And the agent went and got a gold dinar. Now, there you could see that maybe the guy has an issue because his agent went and secured the betrothal, but maybe he overcommitted the individual who deputized the man as an agent. He said, betroth her with a silver dinar. Now maybe the guy overpaid, as it were, by bringing a gold dinar into it. So maybe one of the possibilities was that the Mishnah, which didn't mention agency at all, actually was describing a case that involved agency. And that's what they're discussing right now. So Abaye said, with regard to Rabbi Shimon and Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel and Rabbi Elazar, they all hold that when one instructs an agent in such a manner, he is merely indicating his position to him, as opposed to expressing an insistence on certain details. So if the agent makes insignificant changes to the instructions, the agency is still fulfilled. Right? If the agent basically understood what you wanted and got it for you, and in order to get it for you, he just changed slight insignificant details of his job, it should be that he did his job. It should be considered like he did his job, even though he didn't do exactly what he's instructed to do. Rabbi Shimon holds this as seen, and we see that Rabbi Shimon holds that the agent can deviate slightly in order to accomplish the mission. Rabbi Shimon holds this as seen in this Mishnah that we just said, right, where the guy promised silver and delivered gold. And Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel holds this as we learned in a Mishnah in Tractate Bava Basra, page 160a. Now we're on 49a. In an ordinary document, its witnesses are to sign inside it, i.e. on the written side of the paper. Now we're talking about a regular document. Maybe it's a get, maybe it's a document of betrothal, or maybe it's just a contract to buy a field. Okay, and it's going to need to be witnessed, and the witnesses sign on, where the contract is written. Yeah, I hereby sell this field located at such and such a place to so and so on this date. And underneath that writing, right, the seller and the purchaser are going to sign their names, and the two witnesses are going to sign their names. That's the normal thing. But there's a different kind of a document, and we learned about this document in Tractate Gittin as well, called a folded and tied document. A folded and tied document is very particular. You needed a skilled scribe to create one of these folded and tied documents. And it's almost folded like when you make a paper fan with a bunch of different folds in it. And then within each fold is a location for a witness to sign it. You need numerous witnesses to sign it. And it's tied in a certain way. Very complicated document. Why were such documents used? Well, one of their primary uses was that in certain areas of the Jewish world, a priest, if he was going to divorce his wife, he was required to obtain a get from a scribe that was this complex kind of document. A priest had that requirement, but other people didn't. Why? Because if somebody else in a fit of anger, he and his wife had a fight, he said, you know what, I've had it. And he draws up a get, right? And remember, a husband could do this unilaterally. He draws up a get and hands it to his wife. She, receives it. Boom, they're divorced. That's it. And then the next day, the guy thinks, what have I done? Well, I don't want to divorce my wife. I was just so angry. Honey, I'm sorry. I apologized. I'm groveling. I'm on my knees. Please marry me again. And she says, okay. And they get back together. And this was an incident they can put behind them. But if a priest has the same experience, gets all angry, and divorces his wife, the next day, he can't remarry her because she's now a divorcee, and a priest cannot marry a divorcee. So to create a cooling off period, as it were, in certain areas, they required that if a priest was going to divorce his wife, he had to get one of these folded and tied gets. It was going to be difficult to get it, going to hire a scribe to write it, then he's going to have to take it around to a bunch of people to sign it. A lot more difficult, and maybe by the end of that process, he's cooled off and he doesn't hand it to his wife. Okay, so with regard to an ordinary document whose witnesses wrote their signatures on the back of it, or a tied document whose witnesses wrote their signatures inside of it, both of these are not valid. Rabbi Hanina ben Gamliel says a tied document whose witnesses wrote their signatures inside of it is valid because one can transform it into an ordinary document by untying it. And Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel says everything is in accordance with regional custom. If an ordinary document is generally used and one wrote a bound one or vice versa, the document is invalid. Right? So we see when they're discussing that other kind of document and how it's used, even though you might think, well, the bound and tied document, it's just a more difficult document to produce. But essentially, if you do go to the trouble of producing it, you have something that you know is legit, that you know has been witnessed, and even maybe by more than two witnesses. So if only a normal document was required and somebody delivered the bound and tied document, not using it in the area of divorce, but using it, let's say, in the area of purchase and sale, where it's not even required, did he over-deliver, or did he deliver something that was not wanted, right? That's how we're getting to this bound and tied document. And so says the Gemara, and we discussed that issue. And does the first Tana not accept that one should follow the regional custom? It is not reasonable that he should take issue with such a basic concept. And Rav Ashi says that they have a dispute in a case where one instructed a scribe to write a document for him. So if they are in a place where the custom is to write an ordinary document, and the scribe made a tied and bound one for him, or alternatively, if they are in a place where the custom is to write a tied document, and he made an ordinary one for him, in both of these cases, everyone agrees that he was certainly particular in his instructions to the agent that he should follow the regional custom, and if the agent deviated from the custom, so certainly the document is invalid. But the situation in which those sages disagree in Tractate Bava Basra is where they are in a place where the custom is to use an ordinary document or a tied one, and the one requesting the document said to the scribe, make an ordinary document for me. And the scribe went and made a tied document for him. Now, in such a case, one sage, the first Tana, holds that the one requesting the document was particular about wanting an ordinary document. And since the scribe wrote a tied document, it is considered to have been written without his consent. And the other sage, Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel, which is why we're talking about him here with regard to whether one, under-promised and over-delivered in the betrothal situation, over there with regard to this, more, stringent document. And one sage, Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel, holds that the one requesting the document was merely indicating his position to the scribe, stating that if the scribe wanted to save himself the trouble of writing a tied document, there would be no objection. All I need is a regular document. You don't have to write a tied document for me if you're in a hurry. So that's what Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel said. And Rabbi Elazar also holds that when one instructs an agent in such a manner, he is merely indicating his position to him. As we learned in a Mishna in Tractate Gittin, this tractate on 65a, the previous tractate on 65a, if there was a woman who said to her agent, receive my get from me, my bill of divorce from my husband in such and such a place, and he received her get for her elsewhere, it is invalid. And Rabbi Elazar deems it valid. Apparently, he holds that she is merely indicating a place to her agent where he's likely to encounter the husband so that he can receive the get. And it's not that she's saying you can only receive the get in that particular location where I am instructing you. Right? The big issue is receiving the get. Where exactly it's obtained doesn't matter. But since she specified a place, did she mean you can only receive it from me in that place? That's what the majority seem to say. Or did she mean that place will probably work well to receive it? Just make sure you receive it, which is how Rabbi Elazar interpreted it. Ula says, the dispute in our Mishnah here in Tractate Kiddushin, Mishnah number 3 in chapter 4 that we're discussing, the dispute in the Mishnah between the first Tana and Rabbi Shimon, right? Rabbi Shimon says if you promise a silver dinar and you gave a gold one, the betrothal stands. And the first Tana, who speaks on behalf of the majority, says if you say you're going to give a silver dinar and you gave gold, there is no betrothal because it's not what you promised. So Ula says, the dispute in the Mishnah between the first Tana and Rabbi Shimon is only where he misled her with enhanced monetary value, i.e. he gave her something worth more than the item he had stipulated. But where he misled her with enhanced lineage, so that she was under the impression that his genealogy was less impressive than in fact it is, everyone agrees that she is not betrothed. Like if he said, be betrothed to me on condition that I am a Levite, and then it turns out that he's actually a Cohen, right? Kohanim are Levites, but they're an even smaller, more prominent group, the priests, right? So he is a Levite, right? All the Kohanim are descendants of Aaron, and Aaron was a Levite, but they are much more than all the rest of the Levites because they're also Kohanim. So this is a guy who over-delivered. So what they're saying now is, even according to Rabbi Shimon, he says, I promise you, be betrothed to me with this silver dinar, and he gives a gold dinar. It's definitely worth more. So according to Rabbi Shimon, that works. According to the majority, no. But now they're saying that even Rabbi Shimon would agree that if he says to her, be betrothed to me on condition that I'm a Levite, and it turns out that he's not only a Levite, he's actually a Cohen, which is even more prominent, no betrothal. Even Rabbi Shimon would agree. Why? And what is the reason for this? Because a woman says, I do not desire a shoe that is larger than my foot. She does not wish to marry a man whose social standing is too far above her own. That'll create problems for her. And this is also taught in a Baraisa, Tosefta 2:6. Rabbi Shimon concedes that if he misled her with enhanced lineage, she is not betrothed. That was just one example. It could also be lineage in the sense that the guy says, be betrothed to me on condition that I, come from a decent family. And it turns out he's a direct descendant of the Vilna Gaon or the Baal Shem Tov. And he has very prominent, august lineage, which would make him a catch, right? In the very traditional religious Jewish world. To be descended from such a prominent person would make you a catch. So maybe he thinks, but you know what? Maybe I'm too much of a catch, so I'll just lead more humble. Okay, but, she needed to know that information before marrying him, and that would actually be reason for her to say, you know what, that's not what you promised. That's more than I want. And so I say no. Rav Ashi says the wording of the Mishnah is also precise in this regard, as the following Mishnah teaches. If one betroths a woman and states that the betrothal is on the condition that I am a priest and he was found to be a Levite, or on the condition that I am a Levite and he was found to be a priest, or on the condition that I am a Gibeonite, people prohibited by rabbinic law from marrying into the congregation of Israel, meaning marrying a Jew of fit lineage, and he was found to be a mamzer, who is prohibited by Torah law from marrying into the congregation, or he said on the condition that I am a mamzer and he was found to be a Gibeonite, In all these cases, she is not betrothed. And Rabbi Shimon does not disagree with these rulings. And this indicates that if one misled a woman with regard to his lineage, even if he delivered better lineage than he promised her, even Rabbi Shimon concedes that there is no betrothal. Mar bar Rav Ashi objects to this inference. But what about that which is taught in the same Mishnah? If one betroths a woman and states that the betrothal is on the condition that I have a grown daughter or a maidservant, and he does not have one, or if one betroths a woman on the condition that he does not have a grown daughter or a maidservant, when in fact he does have one, the latter of which is an issue of enhanced monetary value, right? If he says, be betrothed to me on the condition that I don't have a maidservant, right? I don't have a female slave who works for us in the house. And it turns out that he does. Well, that seems to be offering greater value. It means that the woman who's going to come into his house and be his wife is going to have much less work to do because she's going to have a female slave to order around. But right away to the modern, you're like, well, maybe she doesn't want to be the owner of a slave. Maybe she doesn't want somebody living in her house with her. You can see how even though this would be enhanced monetary value, it might not be desirable to this prospective wife. But at any rate, when these cases are stated in the next Mishnah coming up, Mishnah number 4, we're just sort of foreshadowing it here. But what about that which is taught in that Mishnah that's coming up on the condition that I have a grown daughter or maidservant and he doesn't have one? Or on the condition that he does not have a grown daughter or maidservant and he does have one? The latter of which is an issue of enhanced monetary value, as the difference between one who has a maidservant and one who does not impacts how hard the woman will have to work in the home. In all these cases, will you also say that Rabbi Shimon does not disagree simply because the Mishnah does not mention his opinion in that case? Rather, it must be that he disagrees in the first clause of the Mishnah with regard to enhanced monetary value, and the same is true with regard to the latter clause, i.e. he also disagrees in that clause, and it was not necessary to state his dispute another time. So here too, with regard to lineage, he disagrees with the first clause, and the same is true with regard to the latter clause, right? And the Gemara says, no. How can these cases be compared? There, where both this case and that case involve an inaccuracy of enhanced monetary value, it is possible that he disagreed in the first clause, and the same is true in the last clause, right? Rabbi Shimon might say that, okay, if he promised to give X and he ended up giving something that is worth more than X, okay, so he over-delivered and the betrothal should stand. But with regard to enhanced lineage, Rabbi Shimon does not seem to agree, right? So the Gemara says, how can these cases be compared? There, where both this case and that case involve an inaccuracy of enhanced monetary value, it is possible that Rabbi Shimon disagreed in both the first clause and the last clause. But here, where it is a case of enhanced lineage, which is a totally different issue, if it is so that Rabbi Shimon disagrees, then the Mishnah should teach that explicitly. And the fact that no dispute is recorded in the case of enhanced lineage is proof that he concedes in that case. He doesn't object. So meaning he agrees that if the guy sort of over-delivers with respect to his lineage, that is not something we overlook, not even Rabbi Shimon overlooks it. It is not betrothal because he didn't deliver what he said he would, even though you could say enhanced lineage is an over-delivery. Now, if you wish, you could say instead, here too, the issue of a daughter or maidservant involves not enhanced monetary value, but enhanced lineage. His statement should be understood differently. Do you maintain that what is the meaning of his statement that he has a grown daughter or maidservant, that she is actually grown up or that she can be of help to his wife? That is not the meaning of his statement. Rather, what is the meaning of grown? It means that she grows and plaits hair, i.e. he has a daughter or maidservant who is a hairdresser. So why might the potential bride view this as a drawback? Because she can say, it is not satisfactory to me to live in a house with a hairdresser, as she will take words that she hears from me and will go and pass them before my neighbors, meaning she will gossip about me to others. And this concern is more akin to a matter of lineage than a matter of monetary value. New subject. The sages taught if one said to a woman, be betrothed to me on the condition that I am literate with regard to the Torah. So, Now we're going to define what does it mean. If he said, you can be betrothed to me, you're going to have to give he's going to have to give money also, but he's going to add a condition, a stipulation that she probably demanded, right? Let's say, remember like Rabbi Akiva, when he married Rachel, right? He was totally ignorant. She said to him, I will marry you on the condition that you learn Torah. And he said, I will do it, right? And then he started learning, and, Akiva the shepherd ended up becoming the great Rabbi Akiva, one of the greatest rabbis in all of history. So now we're talking about these kinds of conditions, and we're going to say, well, what do these conditions really mean? So the sages taught, if one said to a woman, be betrothed to me on the condition that I am literate with regard to the Torah. Once he has read 3 verses in the synagogue, she is betrothed. He has delivered his promise that he is literate in the Torah by showing that he could read 3 verses aloud in the synagogue. And Rabbi Yehuda says that she is not betrothed until he reads and translates the verses. And the Gemara asks, does Rabbi Yehuda mean that one translates according to his own understanding? But isn't it taught in a Baraisa, Tosefta of Megillah 3:21, that Rabbi Yehuda says one who translates a verse literally is a liar, since he distorts the meaning of the text. And conversely, one who adds his own translation is tantamount to one who curses and blasphemes God. Rather, to which translation is Rabbi Yehuda referring? He is referring to our accepted translation, meaning the accepted translation of the sages. Let's just pause and absorb that for a second. Because remember that generally speaking, unless you're very expert, not just as a Hebrew speaker and a Hebrew reader, but with great knowledge, right? It's very difficult to read scripture and know really what you're reading, right? And especially for us, first of all, Hebrew is not my first language, not my second language, not my third language. I really struggle in Hebrew. At this point, I've picked up a lot of words. I can often read verses in the Torah if I just go really, really slow and know basically what I'm reading, but I am very far away from knowing exactly what is stated there. So I will typically read in English so that I have a much better chance to understand it. As soon as you're reading scripture in translation, you are reading an interpretation. Because depending on how it's translated, the original meaning is going to change a lot. And that's why you have to be so careful in choosing the translation, choosing the Bible, choosing the company, choosing the publisher whose translations you can trust, right? I have generally found that I can trust ArtScroll and I can trust Koren, right? Koren is what we're reading here, and this is published with the elucidation of Rav Steinsaltz. And if you look on Sefaria, you're usually reading the translation from Koren of the Talmud. But there are other translations where all kinds of interpretation is creeping in. You really have to be aware that that's happening. And you should know that in the sage's opinion, when somebody just chooses a translation and it's not the authorized translation, or does his own translation and it's not the authorized translation that includes the Masorah, sort of the inheritance of the tradition that began with Moses at Sinai and was transmitted by the sages and through all the other sages and the Gedolim, the great Torah luminaries of every generation. If you're not reading that kind of authorized translation, you are reading blasphemy. Okay. And this statement applies, right, that if he claims that he is literate in Torah, but he's translating on his own, right, problem. What does it mean that he's translating? It means that he's translating according to the accepted translation. And this statement applies only if he said to her, I am literate. But if he said to her, I am a reader, I am a reader of Torah. Well, this indicates that he is an expert in the reading of the Torah, and then she is not betrothed unless he knows how to read the Torah, the prophets, and the writings with precision. Not just the first 5 books of the Bible, but all of the Hebrew Bible with precision, that he knows how to read it, he understands what he's saying, and he understands it according to the accepted translation. The Gemara discusses a similar case. If one said to a woman, be betrothed to me on the condition that I study, Chizkiah says it means that he studies halachos, he studies laws. And Rabbi Yochanan says it means that he studies Torah, meaning the written Torah. Now the Gemara raises an objection to Rabbi Yochanan from a Baraisa. What is the meaning of Mishna in this context? Rabbi Meir says halachos, right, the laws. Rabbi Yehuda says homiletics, right, the interpretation according to the Mishnah. So neither of them, however, says that it refers to the written Torah. Now we're on 49b. What is the meaning of Torah? Meaning that somebody says, I'm an expert in Torah. What is the meaning of Torah? That Rabbi Yochanan said. When Rabbi Yochanan referred to Torah, he meant the homiletic interpretation of the Torah, right? Meaning that somebody who knows Torah is somebody who knows what the sages would say about any verse in the Torah. And this statement applies only if he said to her, I study, right? He might have like just, it's kind of like, I study. I study Torah. If he said, I study Torah, and he lived in the world of the sages, he was making a big claim. Not just that he does daf yomi, not just that he sets aside some time every day to read from the Bible. He's making a much bigger claim than that. And but if he says to her, I am a Tana, well, then she is not betrothed unless he studies halacha, Sifra, and Sifre, and Tosefta. In other words, increasing levels of, he's not just a scholar, he's a Torah scholar, he's a committed Torah scholar, he's a sage, right? If a man says to a woman, be betrothed to me on the condition that I am a student of Torah, one does not say that he must be a student who is scholarly like Shimon ben Azai or like Shimon ben Zoma, who were called students despite their great knowledge. I mean, these are genuine sages whose words are included in Pirkei Avos, right? Ben Zoma is the one who said, who is wise? One who learns from every person. Who is rich? One who is content with what he has. Who is honored? One who honors others. And who is strong? One who conquers his impulse. That's Ben Zoma. But Ben Zoma never received semicha. He was never ordained as a rabbi. Nevertheless, we look up to him as one of the great sages in history, and it was just a quirk of the time that he didn't actually receive the title of rabbi, but his words and commentaries and, his teachings are considered way above, 99% of the rabbis in history, even though he himself was not a rabbi. So when somebody says that he's a student of Torah, we don't hold him to the standard of Shimon ben Azai or Shimon ben Zoma. Rather, one who says he's a student of Torah, this means anyone who, when he is asked one matter in any topic of his studies, responds appropriately and can say what he has learned. And this suffices even if his statement was in the tractate of Kala. And they in the notes, it talks about what is the tractate of Kala. There's a minor tractate called Kala, which is actually the laws of conjugal relations. It's a Mishna. It's a tractate in the Mishnah, not in the Gemara. We don't learn it in Talmud Bavli. It wasn't studied very often, and it might have just been an example of one that does not have, huge mountains of scholarship associated with it. So it might be one of the easier tractates to know. And similarly, if a man says to a woman, be betrothed to me on the condition that I am a scholar, one does not say that he must be like the scholars of Yavne, like Rabbi Akiva and his colleagues. Rather, is referring to anyone who, when he's asked about a matter of wisdom on any topic related to the Torah, responds appropriately and can say what he has learned. Pretty high bar. Pretty high bar. If a man says to a woman, be betrothed to me on the condition that I am strong, one does not say that he must be as strong as Avner ben Ner, King Saul's cousin and general, or as strong as Joab ben Zeruiah, Zeruiah, King David's nephew in general. Rather, it means anyone of whom others are afraid due to his strength. And if a man says to a woman, be betrothed to me on the condition that I am wealthy, one does not say he must be as wealthy as Rabbi Elazar ben Charsam or as wealthy as Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, but rather it can refer to anyone who is honored by the members of his town due to his wealth. Right? So they're saying that if you make such a claim, and when you're trying to betroth a woman and you say that you're rich or you're strong or you study or you're learned or you're wise, any kinds of claims like that, okay, we're not going to hold you to some kind of extreme standard, but you're going to have to deliver in a significant way on that promise. If, however, one says to a woman, be betrothed to me on the condition that I am a righteous man. Well, according to what we've learned so far, you would think, okay, if one says he's a righteous man, he's not going to have to be righteous, on the level of Yosef HaTzadik, right? Joseph, the son of Jacob, who is called Yosef HaTzadik, right? Such a righteous man, perhaps because he resisted all the wily seduction of Potiphar's wife, and he forgave his brothers, and he saved the whole Jewish nation at that time from the famine, etc. And, really, in his lifetime, it was great for the Jews in Egypt. Only later it got bad. But Joseph was known for being extremely righteous. So you might have thought, well, if you say to a woman, be betrothed to me on the condition that I am righteous, okay, you don't have to be as righteous as Joseph, but you have to be someone that everyone in the town would point to say, yeah, that's a righteous guy, right? So that seems like what you'd be claiming, given the standards we've encountered so far. But that is not so. If one says to a woman, be betrothed to me on the condition that I'm a righteous man, then, even if he was a completely wicked man, she is betrothed. Why? As perhaps, in the meantime, he had thoughts of repentance in his mind, and he is now righteous. And similarly, if one says to a woman, be betrothed to me on the condition that I am a wicked man, then even if he was a completely righteous man, she is betrothed. As perhaps he had thoughts of idol worship in his mind, a serious sin that would earn him the label of wicked. I would say in all these matters, when you go out to create betrothal, get to know the person, ask around, check references, and really know the person and who they are and who they claim to be, and not just rely on these claims to create betrothal. Apropos the discussion with regard to various attributes, the Gemara cites a related statement. Fascinating statements here. Now that we're talking about who is wise and who is righteous, etc., this is a bit of a digression, but it's beautiful. 10 kav of wisdom descended to the world. Eretz Yisrael took 9 of them, and all the rest of the world took 1. 10 kav of beauty descended to the world. Jerusalem took 9, and all the rest of the world in its entirety took 1. 10 kav of wealth descended into the world. Rome took 9, and all the rest of the world in its entirety took 1. 10 kav of poverty descended into the world. Babylonia took 9, and all the rest of the world in its entirety took 1. 10 kav of arrogance descended to the world. Elam took 9, and all the rest of the world in its entirety took 1. Elam is a region in southwest Iran. The Gemara asks, but did arrogance not descend to Babylonia? But isn't it written, then I lifted my eyes and saw, and behold, there came forth 2 women, and the wind was in their wings, for they had wings like the wings of a stork, and they lifted up the measure between the earth and the heaven. And then I said to the angel that spoke with me, to where do they take the measure? And he said to me, to build her a house in the land of Shinar. That's Zechariah chapter 5 verses 9 through 11. And Rabbi Yochanan says this refers to flattery and arrogance that descended to Babylonia. And Shinar is another name for Babylonia. So this indicates that arrogance reached Babylonia as well. And the Gemara answers, yes, it descended to here, to Babylonia. And it made its way to there, Elam. The language of the verse is also precise as it teaches to build her a house, which indicates that the original intention was to build a house in Babylonia. but it was not built there. And the Gemara comments conclude from it that arrogance did not remain in Babylonia. It's not a nation known for being arrogant like the people of Elam. And the Gemara answers, yes, it descended to here, to Babylonia. I just read that. And the Gemara further asks, is that so? But didn't the master say a sign of arrogance is poverty? And there is poverty in Babylonia and not in Elam. And the Gemara answers, to what kind of poverty is this referring? It is poverty with regard to Torah, which was characteristic of Elam. As it is written, we have a little sister and she has no breasts. Song of Songs 8:8. And Rabbi Yochanan said this refers to Elam, whose inhabitants merited to learn, but did not merit to teach. They did not produce Torah scholars capable of imparting their wisdom to others. And the Gemara returns to its list of endowments of various groups. 10 kav of strength descended to the world, and the Persians took 9, and the rest of the world took 1. 10 kav of lice descended into the world. Media took 9, and the rest of the world took 1. 10 kav of witchcraft descended to the world. Egypt took 9, and the rest of the world took 1. 10 kav of plagues descended to the world. Pigs, which carry disease, took 9, and the rest of the world took 1. 10 kav of licentiousness descended to the world. Arabia took 9, and the rest of the world took 1. I found that one a little bit interesting because if you think about, I'm just talking stereotypes here, no personal knowledge. I could be very wrong. But just if you think about, the impression that you have, if you think about Arabia, a place like Saudi Arabia, where I'm sure there are exceptions, but the general picture that is painted is that it's a pretty devout nation, right, where Islam is practiced quite strictly. And definitely, I don't know much about Islam, but I would say that it frowns on licentiousness. But when these guys are talking, it's long before Islam, right? So maybe Arabia was a much more licentious place before, Islam came to that part of the world. Again, I don't know anything. I'm just talking about general impressions. 10 kav of brazenness descended to the world. Meshan, near Babylonia, took 9, and the rest of the world took 1. 10 kav of conversation descended to the world. Women took 9, and the rest of the world took 1. 10 kav of drunkenness descended to the world. The Cushites took 9, and the rest of the world took 1. And finally, 10 kav of sleep. 10 kav of sleep descended to the world. Slaves took 9, and all the rest of the world in its entirety took 1. And that concludes our discussion of Mishnah number 3 here in chapter 2. I'm just going to read to you Mishnah number 4, and then we'll be done for the day. So if you've got questions or comments, please get them in. Mishnah number 4, chapter 2. If one said to a woman, be betrothed to me on the condition that I am a priest, and he was found to be a Levite. Or if he said a Levite and he was found to be a priest, right? So either way, it's not going to work. Or if he said, be betrothed to me on the condition that I am a Gibeonite, a people prohibited by rabbinic law from marrying into the congregation, and he was found to be a mamzer, who is prohibited by Torah law from marrying into the congregation. Or if he said a mamzer and he was found to be a Gibeonite, or if he said, be betrothed to me on the condition that I'm a resident of a small town, and he was found to be a resident of a large city. Or if he said, I'm a resident of a city, and he was found to be a resident of a town. Or if he said, be betrothed to me on the condition that my house is close to a bathhouse, and it was found to be far. Or if he said, on condition that I am far from the bathhouse, and he was found to be close. Then in all these situations, she is not betrothed. Or if he said that she is betrothed to him on the condition that he has a grown daughter or a maidservant and he does not have one, or on the condition that he does not have one and he does have one, or on the condition that he has no sons and he has sons, or on the condition that he has sons and he does not have sons, then she is not betrothed. And in all these cases, despite the fact that she later stated, I intended to become betrothed to him nevertheless, whether or not he fulfilled the condition, she is not betrothed. And similarly, if it was she who misled him by making the betrothal condition upon a statement of hers that turned out to be incorrect, the betrothal will not take effect. And I think what's most interesting about that is even if she later says, hey, look, I didn't care about the condition. I didn't betroth him. I didn't betroth myself to him because he said he lives near a bathhouse, or because he said he's rich, or because he said he's a Levite or a priest. I didn't care about that, right? So then you might think, well, since she didn't care, she wasn't focused on that, then the betrothal should take effect because he said he wants to betroth her. She wanted to be betrothed. He gave an item of value. The condition was not necessary, and she didn't care about the condition. So you might think that the betrothal would take hold, but it doesn't, because they added language that turned out to be false. And do you want to build your betrothal on a foundation that includes a falsehood? No, you do not. And so betrothal doesn't take effect. They can get betrothed. They just have to do it again. That's what I've got for us today. Looks like I just see one question from Sharon. What if one gets betrothed under the condition that one is not a sage, but after marriage he becomes one without the approval of the wife? Does that affect the status of the marriage? I think what they're saying here is betrothed to me on condition that I am something in the present. So it seems to me that what comes later doesn't matter, because by then the betrothal took effect. Presumably they proceeded to the chuppah, they got married. And then the fact that she doesn't agree to him spending who knows how many hours a day learning, it wasn't what she liked. But I don't think it affects the fact that the betrothal was created at the outset of their relationship. That's my impression. That's what I've got for us today, and with God's help, we'll be together again tomorrow, Tuesday at the regular time, 6 p.m. Pacific.